This is TWiT.
Our guest, we like to start the show with an interview. I think it's a fun way to find out what's going on, the latest in AI. And our guest this week is a dear friend, a legend in technology, the author of so many great books, starting with Hackers, which was really the seminal story of the MIT hackers and how the whole computer revolution started. And if you haven't read it yet, by all means, read it. Steven Levy is here. He's a regular writer, a columnist for Wired. Great to see you, Steven. There is a stack of his books behind.
I'd like to be here.
Yeah, we love having you on. Steven was scheduled to talk about that Facebook book that he wrote. And when COVID broke out, that was unfortunate. We're going to wake it up to you this week. You wrote, the original plan on booking you was when you wrote an interesting piece. We've been talking a lot about the Anthropic decision. Anthropic had agreed to a settlement with the authors, $1.5 billion settlement. The judge said, no, not so fast. And I guess that's still up in the air. But your piece, I wasn't sure I wanted Anthropic to pay me for my books. I do now. Was kind of a contrarian point of view, I think, for a lot of people. But since then, you've been busy. You also wrote, I think, a scathing story. I thought I knew Silicon Valley. I was wrong, with an excellent illustration from Cold War Steve. Oh, no, Cold War.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was another piece, which I thought was great. YouTube thinks AI is its next big bang. So we have a lot to talk about today. But let's start with the Anthropic decision. Why do you think it's a good thing?
Well, I'm not talking about necessarily this particular decision. We don't know what the settlement's going to be,
right.
But I think it's a good thing to pay the authors when you use their book in training. And I have to say, I was on the fence about this. And this was a little awkward for me because I'm on the council of the Authors Guild, which is suing these places.
Right.
They're involved in the lawsuits. I actually should say I speak for myself, not the Authors Guild. And when we vote on these things, they poll the council and we vote, should we sue or not sue? I abstain because I'm writing about these places. So I want to keep a little distance from going up to Sam Altman for an interview. And he's saying, by the way, aren't you suing me? And
I'll see you in court, Sam.
Yeah. So it's basically the same as if Kevin Roose talks on the New York Times is suing him. So I have a little arm's length of that. But I was, I think, a little unusual on the board. I'm a little more sympathetic to Silicon Valley than most of my colleagues on the board. And also, I appreciate the counter argument to authors getting paid by saying that training a large language model is something that takes in the world's knowledge. And it's kind of a good thing that we're able to put all that together and make use of it. Anyone could make use of it. So on the other hand, I'm a professional author. I'm a professional writer. I get paid, and it's not quite the same as, a bright human being reading voraciously and then taking that work and using it in their work and their life, because this is something that's millions of people are going to use, and that is a difference. But when I saw the Anthropic settlement, and it comes out to actually some, not giant money, but real money. If it turns out to $3,000 a book, I've written 8 books. My wife has written 5. So, that's a money that can help renovate a bathroom, right?
And that's what it's all about.
$3,000 a book, that's a good deal, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I thought, you know what? I'm really okay with this. I really feel, because books are one of the most important corpus that a large language model could use. Every book is a shot of a world. We build worlds when we write these books, and that is so valuable for the large language models to sort of understand humanity. And, it's very high quality content. It's, original ideas. It's a lot of language, spread out coherently. And I think those models will be impoverished without us. And now you look at the hundreds of billions of dollars that these companies are spending on infrastructure, and suddenly that 1.5 billion, which to be sure is for pirating books, not for training them.
Yeah, the judge
That's
ruled
key.
that they had fair use of the books they
we could talk about
purchased.
that.
If they had just bought your books and you would have gotten $2 each, then we
You wouldn't have
be
gotten anything because they bought used books, by the way.
Right. So now I'm thinking, this fair use interpretation, is trying to apply a 1930s way of thinking to, mid 21st century.
Now,
Doesn't work.
maybe it's changed since you wrote this article, because since you wrote this, Judge Alsop said, no, that's not a settlement. That's not a fair settlement. And in fact, the damages could run into the trillions for Anthropic
If they don't settle.
Yeah, it's 150,000 per
his
violation.
complaint wasn't necessarily with the amount; it was with the structure and the lawyers. Right?
I understand, but by going back to the drawing board, there is this risk that it's going to be a hell of a lot more than 1.5 billion. And a precedent.
Yeah, but remember, that's for infringement. The precedent that really
Yes.
matters is the fair use. And,
I agree, yeah.
And this is step one on it. There's going to be other steps. And, what really there should be is a rethinking of the law, though I'm a little worried considering who's running the country, how that would work out for authors. But
you would accept the fair use judgment, or you prefer to get some payment from these guys?
I don't think that, that interpretation of fair use in any way anticipated AI.
Yeah.
In the piece, you draw some parallels to kind of music licensing. Do you have a sense of what a fair or workable kind of collective licensing system for books could even look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad you brought that up, because one big reason, and Donald Trump cited this as the reason why you couldn't pay the authors, for what their writings, in a large language model, would be because it's so hard to do. It's hard to figure out. But they figured it out, without AI for music licenses. People go into bars and clubs and, listen, can log radio shows, and they figure out what slices to give and streaming and all the rest of it. I don't have the solution, but actually the Authors Guild is working with places to help figure that out. And I think there can be some way to do that. I'm talking to people now who are working in interpretability in AI, the way AI models, to get inside the model and see how they work. And I think actually it would be quite feasible to have a model saying, this output came because, it was 6% from hackers, Steven Levy's book. And then, there would be...
With a link to the book itself so they could buy it.
Yeah, it could be a link, but or it could be that a little, like in Spotify, a little percentage of the pool.
A fee to you.
But that's part of the paradox of what's happening right now is companies like my former employer and now yours are cutting off with the exception of Google because they want to be in search, they're cutting off all of the AI companies. And Schibsted, the Norwegian company, just put out some stats today saying they've got a click-through rate from ChatGPT of 1.2 to 5%. 5%, by the way, for opinion pieces, not fact pieces, which is interesting. And so we're starting to see that AI is a new mechanism of discovery. So aren't we replaying the old search argument? How dare you take the soul by taking a picture of me, but I want the links from you? Aren't we going to end up in the same place with AI? Or its discovery?
Any links coming from AI?
But there is. There's data now, and a place like Schibsted is making itself available, and they're getting links and they're getting click through.
But
there was
maybe
another
not
study.
to books.
Well,
Jeff.
no, it's in fact the study that we talked about last week says that ChatGPT is not linking to social at all, but it is linking to editorial matter, which includes books.
Yeah, but not book. Well, you're not going to link to a book because a book would be purchasable.
Well, that's the part. That's to me the bigger question. Shouldn't we make
Yeah.
our books linkable? It would be a good thing if they were.
I guess
Well, you can always go to
stepping-
StevenLevy.com.
That's true.
And would that be acceptable to you, Steven, instead of a micropayment that they say, 13% of this story came from hackers, and then a link to StevenLevy.com?
No, they're getting
Guarantee
money.
a link?
They're getting money from that, from using.
So you want a micropayment?
This is it's like one more, licensing opportunity. Just like someone might make a movie out of your book, you get some more money. Someone would run it as a first serial, you get some money. It's another way to get paid.
I have heard the argument that there isn't that as much money as you think there is in AI. I mean, none of these companies are profitable.
Well, not right now, but they are going only under the assumption
They
that
think
they
they
will
will
make
be.
trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, that a lot of that money is being made from using our material.
I love your man from
Stepping-
Uncle Lunchbox behind you, by the way. I just saw Napoleon Solo
Yeah,
peeking
it's
out
really
of
I like the
cute.
Boz Skaggs album there. That's my
and the
favorite.
Boz Skaggs album. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted.
Stepping back a minute, the three most recent pieces that you published, there's this thread of power consolidation among them. Do you think that AI is kind of accelerating this concentration of cultural and political power in tech, or it's merely kind of just exposing what was already there?
I think it's the former. I think it's accelerating it. These right now is interesting because a lot of companies, startups, are trying to figure out how to find niches where they could plug into APIs of these models and have them be useful. But I think you're going to find that a lot of what they do will be fulfilled by the models themselves. So I think it is an essentializing movement that and especially since the amount of money which is going to be involved in building out these infrastructures, and they're going to need to pay that off, is going to push them in that direction.
I'm also curious. I mean, you've been writing about tech for decades. Does the AI era feel like a genuinely new inflection point, or is it more of a chapter and evolution of kind of the same disruptive technologies clashing with social norms that you've been chronicling for ages?
Well, I do feel that it is one continuous story. That I am writing one story, right? And I started when the PC era was booming. Leo could relate to this, right?
I remember it well. Yes.
Yeah, and then on top of that, came connectivity, came the internet, and then there was mobile, and then there was social, and then and each thing built on top of the previous one. I think this does that, but I think some inflection points are bigger than others. The internet was like a massive inflection point, bigger than social, I think bigger than mobile, but then of course that involved the connectivity. I think it could be the biggest of all.
Wow.
Where do you come down on the doomsters on AGI? Do you believe AGI is actually going to is a legitimate goal and is
I
going to be
see you
reached?
have Ray Kurzweil's book behind you. The Singularity is Nearer. We had Ray on a few months ago.
Yeah. No, I did an interview with him too, and
Fascinating,
I was really curious about what he thought it would be like to be 400 years old. I said,
And full of computronium, yeah.
because you kind of keep listening to the music. You can see Boz Skaggs. You listen to when you were younger, you're like a teenager, and when you're 400 years old, are you still going to listen to the Rolling Stones?
Great
Well, of course.
question.
Wow. And he said, no, you look for new music. I said, well, I'm not younger than 400 years old. And, you look at my record collection, there's not much stuff from this year, But anyway, I think we have difficulty defining AGI, right? You know, right now, I think for a little while it's going to be a moving goalpost, just like AI was. You know, I covered the Deep Blue match against Gary Kasparov, and people thought, well, that answered things. And, you know, the Newsweek cover line for my story was "The Brain's Last Stand," right? But it turned out that
You had a lot of brain-related covers, I suppose.
and then there's Einstein's brain.
I was going to say, famously found Einstein's brain.
Yeah. But I've just a couple weeks ago, I was talking to some of the people in the AI companies, and they were saying, well, gee, now that we were saying we're almost in grasp of AGI, then we have to sort of think what AGI is, right? Because the definition is meaningful. Particularly, it was meaningful between OpenAI and Microsoft, which had a clause about what happens when you reach AGI in their partnership, which in theory they've resolved, but they haven't shared how. But I do feel that the thing is going to get better. I'm not like a Gary Marcus skeptic who's saying that, this is, a plateau and it's kind of a hoax. I do feel that things are going to get significantly better. I don't know what superintelligence really is supposed to mean, but I do believe that these things have a way to go to get better. And even if it doesn't happen all that fast, they're so good now that it's going to take a few years for us even to begin to exploit what we have in our hands now.
I agree 100%. Yeah. But do you have concerns about it? I mean, you've been writing about these kinds of things going back to Artificial Life, the book you wrote some years ago. Do you have some concerns at all? It's not. You don't have to be a doomer, but
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's concerns of how well they do things right now. There's a number of things they do as well or better than people. There's a other category of things that they nailed pretty good. The pretty good level, which is enough to knock out people's jobs. We've seen a couple studies recently, which shows that in terms of employment, the people they're harming most are entry-level jobs. That if companies are trying to save money by not hiring new people, because AI can do that, which is, I think, a big mistake, because then where's their next level of executive going to come from if people can't start and learn and get better at it? But I think that there's a lot of problems we have from that. It's going to automate, probably already is, malicious hacking, and enable people to do a lot of bad stuff. And the temptation is just way too great for college students not to use that to prevent them from getting what they're paying for at these colleges, which is learning.
Yeah. I have a lot of concern about government's use of AI as well. It really has become a tool for government oppression. But also, I worry when you hear that, the Social Security Administration is going to use AI to determine who gets benefits. It seems like a bad idea on the face of it. There are lots of misuses, I guess, of AI, as many poor ways to use it as there are good ways, maybe more poor ways to use it than good ways. But you know what? You've covered technology since the dawn of the PC era. Every technology has pros and cons that come along with it. We lived in an era where we thought the paperless office was just around the corner.
Yeah. Steven, I'm really curious to get to your latest piece in Wired and your view of the culture of Silicon Valley, because you've covered the culture there more than really any other journalist. Did you sense
I thought
a change?
I knew. By the way, we should say, just to re-intro him, Steven Levy, editor-at-large at Wired magazine, Washington Post, called him the, I forgot what it was, the premier technology journalist of our time. I think that's true. That's fair.
I won't argue.
His piece from 2 days ago in Wired, I thought I knew Silicon Valley. I was wrong. Tech got what it wanted by electing Trump a year later. It looks more like a suicide pact.
Was it a change, or was it the essence finally coming out?
I somewhat more the latter. It certainly did not begin with Trump. So it had been, over the last decade, certainly, there's a shift from, where the the ideals that I engaged with that drew me to this field were no longer so much in play, particularly among the bigger companies that I've been covering for so many years and the people running them.
There was a book some years ago by John Markoff, What the Dormouse Said, talking about how the 60s counterculture had influenced Silicon Valley. And you think of people like Steve Jobs as basically being a hippie, but there, at some point, was a shift in Silicon Valley towards aggressive capitalism, shall we say. And one of the things I think I've learned from the Trump era is that these guys never really had much of a commitment to the intersection of the arts and technology or DEI or any of this stuff, that these were merely pretexts to make more money. Do you agree?
I don't know from the very beginning that happened. I think there's a shift that happens. I've known Mark Zuckerberg since 2006. I spent a lot of time with him when I did my book, and I think he was genuinely grappling with some of the effects of his product on people during that time. But at a certain point, you become so removed from everyone else. The money is so unbelievably huge.
Yeah.
You feel, and Mark Andreessen laid this out quite explicitly, you feel, wait a minute, I built this stuff, and here I am being hauled before Congress. People are questioning me. I'm giving money to charity. I've got foundations. Why don't people love me? And he said,
why don't people love me?
Screw them if
really
they
at the
don't.
core of it.
He called it the deal. He said, you make a lot of money, you build a company, you give money to to good causes, and that is the deal. And the public and Congress and other people, they welched on the deal, in his view.
Huh.
And so it was. So he's like, to hell with you.
I remember Larry Page at a Google I/O saying, "We just wish there were a Google Island where we didn't have to worry about regulations. We could just do it." There is that sense. It went from being counterculture, kind of hippies trying to save the world, to we know better, and they should just let technology solve our problems.
Yeah, well, there was always a sense of, we know better. But it was like, we know better to help everyone. A lot of times, like Larry, some things he did know better. I remember very early in the history of Google, he said, they told him how much it would cost to install a phone system. This is in the early 2000s. And he said, no, we're not going to install a system. Everyone will have cell phones. And people thought he was insane.
He was right.
Of course.
We haven't had a business phone system in a long time. Although tax law requires us to pay for people's cell phones if they use it for work. So,
do you have a landline, Stephen?
No, I keep my number with an internet phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep the old number.
That's an old-fashioned way of doing it, right? Yeah. VoIP.
But I
have a fax
get a landline now. They pull the copper wire.
Yeah.
Really?
Have it? Yeah.
As they
cut
should.
the copper. They don't want to. They don't want to maintain a copper infrastructure.
That's value.
What are you excited about for the next 10 years?
We're talking about the downside of AI, but I'm excited about the upside of AI. I'm excited to learn how I'm excited about how it learns. I'm excited about what it could teach us about intelligence. I'm excited to see what novel things these models can come up with to enrich humans.
Yeah.
Not necessarily monetarily.
Yeah. There's an opportunity, and I think your pitch for equity for the content creators is fair. If there is going to be a lot of money to make in this, then, and we want AI to train on good quality material. I mean, I think
But it doesn't
was
mean
Sam
that it gets it all for free. Is
right. Sam
been
Altman
always-
said, you don't want to only train on stuff that we don't have to pay for because, well, he didn't say pay for, but you don't want us to only pay for stuff that people give us because it won't be as good. You want to train on the best books in the world. You want to train on the best journalism in the world. But I think from a equity point of view, I think you make a good case that there should be some compensation. By the way, I love this picture from your website, StevenLevy.com, of you, I guess is a Vanity Fair shoot, sitting next to Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos and a very young-looking Mark Zuckerberg, Johnny Ives in the picture. A lot of people.
Elon Musk.
The Media Power Brokers cover or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Is that Elon's head that's cut off at the top there? I don't.
Oh, Elon was there for sure.
Elon's standing up.
Yeah. So I was wondering who that was. So that's Elon being cut off there.
Yeah, and and there's Lena Dunham. My knee.
Oh, that's Lena
Jessica
Dunham,
Lessons
yeah.
over there in the top right.
Oh yeah, there's
So it's
Jessica,
a
your old
who's
boss.
who.
Yeah.
They somehow let the moderators into the photo shoot. It was one of those classic Annie Leibovitz shoots where.
Oh, this looks very Annie Leibovitz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went off the stage, and I was interviewing Zuckerberg and Michael Abrash, who's the head of his AI lab, or VR lab at the time, not AI. And so the three of us were put into a room. There were people sitting in the room, posed the way we were going to be sitting, right? And she had us assume those poses.
Here's your stand-in, Stephen. You sit there like that person.
Yeah, and then the next panel came in, after they were done, and then she had people standing there. So we all looked like we're together. We weren't.
Oh, they cut it in. Oh, yeah. Isn't that? Yeah, Maria Shriver. It's an interesting group.
You can do that with Google now, but
Yeah. One last question, since you do have the book about Facebook. What do you think of Facebook's pivot from VR, the metaverse? They even changed their name to now AI, and these latest glasses, the Ray-Ban displays.
Well, you could blame mobile for that. When mobile came about, and this is something I found in the book, Facebook had a near-death experience. They were ahead of everyone else because they were the first really big company that was totally on like a web infrastructure, right? All the other companies were like updating every 6 months, and they update every 3 hours maybe, because it was a totally web-based, infrastructure. Then mobile came along, and it was a challenge for them because people had phones that had to be updated, and they didn't know how to deal with that. They didn't know how to do ads on it, and they went on a crash course to learn and figure out how to do it, and they survived. But he told himself, I'm never going to be in that position again. The next paradigm that comes along, I'm going to be on top of. He identified it as VR, which it isn't quite happen, doesn't quite
Didn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. He said in 10 years after I buy Oculus, that's going to happen. And it's more than 10 years and it didn't happen. But he managed to salvage something out of it with the wearables, with the glasses. And then he's like, oh my God, it's AI. Everyone's ahead of me on AI. So he's throwing huge amounts of money to be relevant in AI. And now they're going to try to build it into those glasses. But, when he senses, his spidey sense goes up, that saying there's a paradigm coming up that could unseat us, because that's when companies with a monopoly on something, get overthrown when a new paradigm comes on and everyone, leaves an app and goes on to something powered by the next thing. He wants to react to that threat and be ahead of the game. So that's what's driving.
Hard to do.
It is hard to do.
Yeah.
Apple did it.
Yeah. Apple did it. We don't know if they're going to continue to do it. That seems to be the question mark. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know where they are on AI. But.
Yep. Stephen, such a pleasure. America's premier technology journalist. Read every one of his books. And are you working on a new one?
Not at the moment. I'm zeroing in on one. They keep me busy for Wired.
Yeah, Wired. You're writing a lot for Wired. He's editor-at-large at Wired, and that's a great place to read Stephen's works as well. Stephen, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Stephen.
It's always great, and I love you and your fellow panelists there. So.
Yeah, well, we'll get you back anytime.
Okay,
Thank you,
I'll
Steven.
see you soon.
All right, take care. Steven
Thanks so
Levy,
much.
everybody.
Bye.
America's premier technology journalist, and an inspiration to us all. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this highlight from Intelligent Machines. You know, we do the show every Wednesday. You can watch us do it live, or, as they say, like and subscribe. There's a link down below. Thanks.